Hey there, friends. I know I'm just an old storyteller spinning tales, but if you enjoy stories like these, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support makes this storytelling journey so much more exciting. Before we dive into today's stories, here's a quick disclaimer: the content presented in this video is purely for entertainment purposes. The theories and stories discussed here are entirely speculative and not backed by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's jump into today's mysterious and chilling tales. I never believed the stories about Blackwood Forest. Ghost tales, strange disappearances, it all felt like campfire fiction. But last summer I learned the truth. It started with our late-night camping trip, just me and 3 friends, seeking a break from city life. The forest was silent, almost too silent, except for the occasional crackle of leaves beneath our boots. By midnight, the air felt wrong, heavy, like something unseen was watching. I remember the way the fire flickered, struggling against a wind I couldn't feel. Then came the whispering, faint, like voices carried on the breeze just beyond the reach of our flashlights. We laughed it off, of course, who wouldn't? But deep down I felt it, the kind of dread you can't shake. I should have listened to that feeling. Because hours later, when we woke up to find the tent door wide open and Jason missing, I realized those stories weren't just fiction. This was only the beginning. It was supposed to be a simple getaway, just 4 of us, out in Blackwood Forest, miles from the nearest town. Jason, the prankster, always pushing things too far but never meaning harm. Emily, calm and logical, the one who kept the group grounded. Then there was Mark, my oldest friend, the one who convinced me this trip would be an adventure to remember in me. I was just hoping for some quiet under the stars, far from deadlines and city noise. The forest felt ancient, untouched in a way that made you feel small. Towering pines loomed overhead, their branches tangled like skeletal arms against the pale moonlight. The ground was damp, the scent of moss thick in the air. No phone signal, no nearby cabins, just endless trees and the crackling campfire we'd built at the heart of a small clearing. At first it felt perfect. We laughed, roasted marshmallows, and shared old stories. Jason tried to spook us with tales of the Watcher, a local legend about a figure who stalked the woods, waiting for campers to wander too far. Mark rolled his eyes, but Emily seemed uneasy, glancing over her shoulder more than once. That's when we heard it. A low rustling deep in the trees, just beyond the firelight's reach. I remember the way we all went silent, the crackle of the flames suddenly sounding too loud. Probably a deer, Mark whispered. Jason? He grinned and tossed a stone into the shadows. Silence. Then the sound of branches snapping. Closer this time. We brushed it off, but something shifted after that. The fire didn't feel as warm. The darkness felt thicker, pressing in. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. And as we zipped up our tents for the night, the wind carried a sound I couldn't explain, like faint whispering, just on the edge of hearing. I told myself it was nothing. I wish I hadn't. The night pressed on, colder than it should have been for summer. I couldn't sleep. The tent walls felt too thin, the forest too quiet. Every creak, every shifting leaf outside made my pulse race faster. Then around 2 a.m. I heard it again, soft whispering, like words being spoken just beyond the tent. Too quiet to make out, but unmistakably human. I sat up, heart hammering. "Jason," I whispered, but there was no answer. The sound of steady breathing from Mark's tent next to mine reassured me, but Jason's tent ... silent. I unzipped the flap slowly, peering out into the clearing. The fire had burned low, just dying embers now, casting weak orange glows against the trees. But Jason's tent was open, unzipped all the way. Empty. My stomach nodded. "Jason," I called louder, the sound echoing into the stillness. Emily's tent rustled and she peeked out, eyes wide. "Where is he?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Mark joined us, rubbing his eyes. "Is this another one of his stupid pranks?" That's when we saw it. A set of footprints leading away from the camp. Bare feet, deep imprints in the damp soil. But something was wrong. The steps weren't normal. They veered slightly, like whoever made them was limping ... or being led. We grabbed the flashlights. Mark tried to laugh it off, but there was no humor in his voice now. "Okay, Jason, you made your point. Come back." Silence. We followed the footprints deeper into the woods, flashlights bobbing as the darkness thickened. The whispering returned, closer now, like voices weaving through the branches. But there was no wind. No movement except for us. Suddenly Emily stopped. "Look," she whispered, pointing at the ground. The footprints had ... changed. They were smaller now, child-sized, and they circled back as if whoever had made them was walking around us. "Guys, we should go back," she said, voice trembling. But before we could turn, the sound came again. Not whispers this time. A long drawn-out exhale, like someone standing just behind us, breathing right into the back of my neck. I spun the flashlight. Nothing. But the whispering was louder, swirling, overlapping voices. Then the flashlight caught something, Jason's flashlight, lying half buried in the dirt. The lens was cracked, and scrawled into the bark of a nearby tree were 3 words carved deep. "Don't look back, Dot." Mark's face went pale. "What the hell is this?" And then, from somewhere in the trees, we heard Jason scream. Jason's scream tore through the forest, sharp and desperate. I felt my chest tighten, my breath catching as the sound echoed and then cut off. Silence fell again, heavier this time, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. "We need to find him," Mark whispered, voice shaking. But Emily grabbed his arm, her face pale. "Something's wrong. Jason wouldn't just ... scream like that." Then the whispering returned. Closer, surrounding us. It wasn't just random sounds anymore, it was voices. Familiar voices. "Help me," Jason's voice. "Why didn't you stop at a voice that sounded like my own?" The flashlight in my hand flickered. The batteries were fine, but the beam dimmed, sputtering as the darkness seemed to press in tighter. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement, just a shape, pale and shifting between the trees. Mark pointed his light, and for a split second we all saw it. A figure, too tall, limbs too thin, its face obscured by shadows, but its mouth wide, stretched unnaturally as if caught mid-scream. And beside Dason, he stood slack-jawed, eyes wide with terror but unmoving, like he was in some kind of trance. The thing's hand hovered just above his shoulder. "Jason," I shouted, taking a step forward. The figure snapped its head toward me with a jerking, unnatural motion, and suddenly the whispering stopped. The figure lunged. I stumbled back, heart hammering as the coldest chill I've ever felt passed right through me. It didn't touch me, but I felt it like the air itself was alive with something ancient. Jason collapsed to the ground as the figure dissolved into the shadows. But the forest didn't feel empty. The whispers were gone, but the presence wasn't. We grabbed Jason, half-conscious, pale as a ghost, and ran. But even as we stumbled back toward the campsite, I knew deep down whatever was in that forest wasn't done with us yet. We ran, or at least I think we did. My mind was spinning, the cold air biting at my skin, my legs moving as if someone else was controlling them. Jason was half-conscious, his body limp in our arms, but his eyes, they were wide open, unblinking, staring at something in the distance. "What happened to him?" Emily kept asking, her voice cracking. Mark didn't answer. He couldn't. His face was pale, his mouth dry. I could feel it too, the weight of something following us, something just out of sight, but always there. By the time we reached the clearing, the campfire had long since gone out. It was just us, the trees, and the silence. Jason collapsed as soon as we dropped him on the ground. His eyes rolled back and he began mumbling, but not in words we could understand, just fragmented phrases. Nothing made sense. The cold was biting deeper now, the chill almost unnatural. "Where is it?" I whispered, but no one answered. I could feel it again, the thing that had been lurking in the trees. I didn't dare look back, but I knew it was there, watching, waiting. And then I saw it. In the dying embers of the firelight, something moved, a shadow stretching too long, too thin, crossing the ground. It flickered, as if trying to manifest itself, but stopped when it realized we were looking. I felt it watching us, studying us. My chest tightened and my breath became shallow. "Let's go." Now I said, barely able to get the words out. But Emily, her face pale with fear, shook her head. "We can't leave him. We can't just leave Jason like this." I didn't know what to do. My body wanted to run, but part of me wanted to stay to fight it, to understand what was happening. Jason's eyes snapped open again, but they weren't his eyes anymore. They were cold, distant, empty. He looked at me, but not like he knew me, not like he knew any of us. His lips parted, and he whispered one word, just one. "Leave." Before I could react, before I could say anything, the ground beneath us rumbled. A deep, guttural sound that echoed through the trees, making the very earth tremble. And with that, the trees, those towering, silent giants, began to move. Branches reached down toward us, like fingers trying to grasp us, like the forest itself was alive, pulling us into its depths. And then, silence again. When I opened my eyes, we were back at the edge of the forest, Jason gone. Not just missing, gone. No footprints, no trace. Only the whispering breeze. We left Blackwood Forest that night. The authorities never found Jason, and we never spoke about it again. But every night I hear it, the whispering. Don't look back. And every time I do, I see it.